Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Trojan Conquest Live. Big news. USC is going big game hunting. Bears, Cougars, and even a cowboy. Stay tuned to find out. Good morning. Good afternoon to everybody. We just got some great breaking news. We have great news for all Trojan fans. Bear Alexander is a Trojan. Rick.
Great news. Congrats to Lincoln Riley and the coaching staff and the players for bagging a huge get in Bear Alexander. Little did you know that Lincoln Riley was going bear hunting in the South Bay this weekend. So congrats. Welcome to USC, Bear Alexander.
Yeah, huge news. Everyone's been talking about the worry. You know, all you hear about in the national news is, well, of course we know that Lincoln Riley's have a great offense, but they got Grinch and they have no one. They can't play defense. Slowly but surely, through the portal, through high school recruiting, you're beginning to see this Trojan defense shape up. Early on, it was very clear that it was made that last year's roster by Lincoln Riley, without calling anyone up specifically, he said that this roster will probably be the worst roster we will have here at USC. Well, I think they had a vision. I think they knew where they were going with this. They know they got to get bigger. They know they got to get stronger. Riley has experience going against SEC teams and faring poorly in championship games. Whenever they had problems at Oklahoma, it generally had to be with the fact that there was usually bigger and badder front sevens and offensive lines they're going up against. And this is the first step in fixing that problem at USC. So the bear hunting we're talking about is Bear Alexander. He is a very large man. He's transferring over here from Georgia. And what impact do you think he's going to have here with us, Rick?
Well, this is a huge get. The guy's, reportedly 6'3", 305 to 320 pounds. Class of 2022, top 50 player nationally. He played, I think he played in 12 games last year, had a couple of tackles for losses in the national championship game, 1 or 2 sacks, depending on which stat that you follow. But this is going to be outstanding. This is a major get from Georgia, from the SEC. Now, the SEC has these different rules, right? Self-imposed conference rules that after a certain date in February, if you choose to transfer, you cannot transfer to another SEC school. You'll have to sit out. So those players that did transfer in the first transfer portal window could transfer to an SEC school. Because Bear just went into the transfer portal a little over a week ago, he could not. So SC was an opportunity. This is a huge get because now you're going to have Anthony Lucas, you're going to have Jack Sullivan and Bear Alexander on the line. Very large men. The quality of player has totally increased at USC. This is more looking like the type of USC that we know when USC is at its on the rise and competing for national championships, because this is what you need. We know what a defensive roster looks like. And I'll tell you what, in the 3-4 months since the end of the season, it's shaping up and they're doing a fantastic job. This is just another piece. And oh, by the way, it's going to help out with the class of 2024 recruiting, because this sends a big signal across the country that, yeah, come play for USC. And in 2024, we're going to the Big Ten. And he's got 2 years of eligibility left because he just finished his freshman year. So he's going to be playing the first year, 2024, in the Big Ten with USC.
Yeah, he kind of got to a slow start over at Georgia. He missed spring ball there with a shoulder injury, but he was an impact player. And as Rick alluded to, the fact that he in the championship game, he was able to get in. And I agree with you. I see some conflicting stats. 1 sack, 2 sacks, but it does, I looked at it, it says 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. He's an impact player. He's definitely what we need. When you think about USC, right? When we think about great USC, you fix the lines and you fix USC. If you have the offensive line to do what you want, control the ball, I don't know, maybe salt out a game in a Cotton Bowl, These are the kind of things that make USC great. But I also think of those great, Pete Carroll teams and the teams on defense that were great under any coach in USC history. When you have that Stevie T right in the middle there at nose tackle, when you have like a Ced Ellis, Antoine Woods. These are the kind of space eaters. These are the kinds of guys we've been talking about that just collapse that pocket. They can shove it. They're definitely not going backwards. They can cause havoc, allow the other guys that, maybe draw double teams that allow the other guys free up to get sack happy and get this thing going. So this is a huge pickup for USC. And remember this also, USC is no longer picking up the transfer portal like cast-offs. When USC goes to the portal, we're picking out guys that are starters, guys that are impact players. And that's really what has been said by Lincoln Riley. So there's also some other portal news. Bear Alexander was our big bag. I teased in the beginning that we were going bear hunting, but we're also doing a little bit of hunting, filling out positions, because the problem we have right now is we lost Cortland. So some news we got was Cortland Ford, a multi-year starter at USC at left tackle, is out. He left. Also, some more bad news is that Ethan White, the guy I've been talking about a lot, talking about how we're going to run the ball at that size, that SEC size, second team all SEC. He's not going to be coming as well. It's an undisclosed injury that needs further evaluation. And I think Riley left at the fact that he's going to allow Ethan to announce that his decision and his reasons for it at his own time. But as become clear now, we are very thin on the offensive line. So they're going into the transfer portal for this as well. Over the weekend, there were a couple offensive line targets that came in. First one was Cameron Johnson. I was talking about maybe possibly even a Cowboy. He plays at Wyoming. He's a fifth-year guard. Oh, sorry. Cameron Johnson is a fifth-year guard from Houston. This is the Cougar I was talking about. He was visiting this weekend. Rick, any thoughts on Cameron Johnson?
Yeah, this is a fifth-year player, as you mentioned. It's a position of need, offensive guard. And as you'd mentioned, Ethan White and Cortland Ford this week, basically for their own various reasons, are not going to be on the roster. And so again, I credited the coaching staff for picking up Bear. They are very quick at lifting and shifting. This is reality in college football. You have players that are going to move on, going to go to the transfer portal, and so within the 1 week, they get a official visit from Cameron Johnson, and you also get an official visit for, we'll talk about him later, Emmanuel Pregnon from Wyoming. So not only are you targeting these qualified transfers, but you get them on official visits this weekend too with Bear Alexander. So they're starting to create some momentum, some synergy, wanting to play together. And I think you have to credit also Caleb Williams, because Caleb Williams wants to win and wants to get to college football playoff and wants a chance to win the national championship. That's what he has left. I don't think the personal accolades, he's won those. It's about getting to the playoff and giving your team a chance to win. And Lincoln Riley said that in his press conference when he was hired. But that could be called coach speak or whatever. But if you come and coach at USC, you're expected to win championships. And I think in the close to 18 months he's been here, he's starting to realize that. He knows that.
Yeah, and you brought up I've heard this all over the place. I've heard like different YouTubers pronounce his name differently. I try to go to the Wyoming Media Guide and see if I can get a pronunciation for this gentleman. But the best I'm going to go with Emmanuel Pregnon. He's a right guard, Wyoming, 6'6", 315. He has offers from everyone. This guy is wanted. He was a freshman All-American. Both these guys, G Greens, if you guys aren't watching his videos, please go check him out. He's awesome. He was talking about these guys are highly rated pass rush defenders. So basically their pass blocking skills and pass pro, these guys are excellent, which is great news. We want to keep one thing healthy, and that's want to make sure that Caleb stays on his feet. He was also on campus yesterday.
Yeah, and we're going to wait to hear from Cameron Johnson. He just had his official visit this weekend. Supposedly it's down to USC in Missouri for his services. Again, fifth-year player. And Emmanuel Pregnon from Wyoming, he has over 20 offers, as you mentioned, Tim. And there is a scouting report for him that, according to 24/7 Sports, Clint Brewster, he reads as this: Pregnon has intriguing capability as an interior lineman with ideal body structure and movement skills. He plays with the willingness to bury people in the run game and shows outstanding effort in pass sets. He's still very raw, which gives him exciting potential. Has the ability to be an upper tier offensive guard in college football if he continues to grow in terms of technique, leverage, and awareness. He's quickly becoming one of the most coveted transfers in this transfer portal window. He's got 3 years of eligibility left. And as you mentioned, Tim, he's got over 20 offers, including 6 from SEC teams, including LSU, Texas A&M, and Auburn. And he has, I believe, 7 Pac-12 teams he has offers from, and 5 Big Ten teams, including Penn State. So obviously he's in high demand. And the fact that USC got him on campus this weekend, that's a very good sign.
You guys, thank you, LFG, for I like this video. You guys remember, I'm looking at our analytics on YouTube, and it appears that over 60% of the people that watch our videos are not subscribed. Please do us all a favor. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you guys will know when we're dropping new videos. We do our show every Sunday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern. But we also are going to be dropping a couple surprise episodes, I would say. I know we have a big feature coming with Rick. I don't want to steal his thunder and tell you all about that. But please hit that subscribe button if you don't want to miss any videos from us going forward. So, and then as far as the last part of the piece, I said we did lose Cortland Ford. Now, Cortland Ford's not a guard. These two guys we're talking about right now, they're kind of more of a replacement for Ethan White, was that big guard we were looking to bring in from Florida. It's no longer coming. But we need probably maybe another tackle. And that other tackle that's been talked about often is Matthew Wyckoff, offensive tackle from Texas A&M. He was actually, Josh Henson's very familiar with Wyckoff. He used to be the coach at Texas A&M. So there's hope that maybe down the road, there might be some interest from Wyckoff as well. But right now, the way these lines, like I told you in the beginning, you fix the lines, you fix USC. We're already seeing momentum on the defensive line side. We know we brought in a great class of young guys into the offensive line, but we really want to make sure that we can shore up some of the pieces that we've lost, because it was a big surprise that both these guys didn't come out, especially Lincoln Riley was very surprised, it seemed like, or he seemed like he expected them to be there when he heard that Cortland Ford wasn't going to be there anymore.
Yeah, so Matthew Wyckoff, like you mentioned, Tim, he's another lineman that they're taking a look at. And who knows, maybe USC gets 3 linemen. That would be a perfect situation. And we'll have to wait and see. But a lot of great momentum in this week since the spring game, addressing needs, obviously, with Bear, and then good chance of getting Cameron Johnson and Emmanuel Pregnon to replace Cortland Ford and Ethan White moving forward. And best of luck to Ethan White. It's a tough game. We kind of heard the last couple of weeks that there was possibly a situation. I found it kind of odd that he didn't enroll at the same time as Michael Tarquin from Florida, but we heard that he was going to enroll prior to the summer. And then this kind of just clarifies perhaps, what was happening with his decision-making process or moving forward with football. Another thing, Tim, and I want to get your take on this, is that what also came out, as you know, last week, Trojans, it was announced on Thursday and Friday, 2 new USC collectives, Victory Formation and the House of Victory. It should be noted that John Jackson, our guest last week, congratulations to him and his daughter, Simone Jackson. She is a soccer player on the women's soccer team. She was the first Trojan to receive an NIL package through the House of Victory. They subsequently have also, Justin Diedish was the first football player, and they have a few other players that are starting to get deals with the House of Victory. In addition to the House of Victory and Victory Formation, there was an article in the LA Times this past Friday, according to Ryan Kartchi, quote, in announcing changes to its NIL approach, USC names House of Victory, Tommy Group, that's the group with Keyshawn Johnson, South Bay Athletic Club, CI Program, 3400 Club, and victory formation as third-party collectives that have participated in its NIL education session regarding NCAA rules, university policy, and compliance. So as you can see, USC wasn't really involved in the NIL space, I would say, in the past almost 2 years since it was instituted in July of 2021. They've been doing their due diligence, making sure that any type of collectives that were formed were going to be in compliance. And now you're starting to see, I think we rattled off 5 or 6, 7 of them right now, but they are showing their support for all of Trojans athletics.
Yeah. We've been asking for it, fans, and now we have it. We have some legitimate NIL with, I guess, with a focus. There were some questions in previous iterations of what we were doing with NIL, but you know, you just talked about House of Victory. The victory formation, was started by Emmanuel Hernandez and a number of USC athletes, as well as Jeff McKay, who's the grandson of the legendary John McKay. Many of you older, all of you, if you're a USC fan, you should know who John McKay is. So I'm happy with House of Victory, victory formation. And then also we learned a while back about Keyshawn Johnson starting the Tommy group with a bunch of other players as well. So I think now, and I think we're seeing it with these transfers that are coming in, they had a strategy, and the strategy is not to throw a bunch of money at, let's say, a defensive lineman from St. John Bosco that turned out probably gonna be a tight end. You know, they're going for proven commodity players that are coming here for the right reasons, that want to be here. And it's all about, and you know, later on I'm gonna play a clip in a moment here from Lincoln Riley about transfers, about culture, about what they're trying to set at USC. And that's going to play a huge part in, you know, not only do you want to come here, hey, we like the way you play on the field, but are you a good fit for what we have currently in our locker room? And so really quick, I'm just gonna play a video for you. This is so Lincoln Riley does a presser each week. This is the one that was just done recently, last week after the spring game. Let me cue up the video for you really quick here.
How we've managed the locker room, the kind of the vibe from within, I think we've been very honest with these transfers about what we're building, how we're building it, what's expected from this end, what those guys are walking into, and knowing that if that doesn't fit what the transfer really wants or is about, that we encourage them to not come here. And has that cost us some guys that we liked their on-field evaluation? Absolutely it has, but we can live with that. We're making that the priority. And then also it helps being able to get these transfers on campus and let them interact with our guys, you know, and we've tried to, you know, pair them up as far as like the recruiting hosts and all that with guys that, you know what we're about and know what we're trying to bring in terms of the kind of character and the kind of guys in the locker room that really, they see the individual opportunity, but they really want to be a part of what we're building here. And obviously being able to get that feedback from those players has been very helpful as well. And we've just said, you know, if we feel uneasy about that in any way, that we're just, you know, we're going to go a different direction, and we've stuck to that. And I think that's helped us.
So there it is. We've been hearing a lot about this for a while. I know for a fact that the players have talked about, and the coaches have talked about that when they're bringing someone in, they actually have a panel. Rick, if you correct me if I'm wrong, and so they kind of almost like vote on these guys to come in. I like also he talks about the fact that they line up recruits with, you know, maybe some recruits are like-minded or maybe from their area, just to get a feel for them. Recently, they were talking about bringing in recruits from Wyoming. Well, Solomon Byrd, you know, played at Wyoming, so that when you bring in someone like a Pregnon, you can have him talk to Solomon Byrd about, hey, here's a culture. You know, I remember Wyoming, but here's what we do here. This is the USC way. This is how we do things.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Tim. And Lincoln talked about it, that not only does the coaching staff have to be sold on the background, you know, they have a plan, because this happens really fast. I mean, look at this week. You get 2 guys to come on out for offensive line targets, and then you also have Bear Alexander. But the coaching staff is obviously looking at film, their athletic abilities that have fit, but then there's got to be a culture fit as well. And so, as you mentioned, on this last trip, Emmanuel Pregnon was paired with Solomon Byrd, who's a former teammate, and Jonah Monheim, a current, long-standing USC offensive lineman, and so they do have a players committee that is going to give their input as well because they want it to be the right fit. And bottom line, not every player is going to be the right fit for USC and vice versa. So, but there's a goal here, and that's to win championships. And it's really moving forward in a positive direction. And the amount of progress they've made from year one to year two really is astonishing in terms of the depth that they obviously we have it on offense, but the defense, wow, it has really turned around. Whereas last year we had some, as you know, Trojans, some defensive portal transfers, but between number one and number two, there was a big gap. Now we've got multiple players, and all the rooms are becoming loaded. I think somebody mentioned a comment earlier. Don't forget about Kion Bars. No, not at all.
Yeah,
but
no.
now you got Kion Bars and you got Bear Alexander. So, and this is what the SEC has. Now, granted, USC is nowhere near the top programs, let's say Ohio State, Georgia, in terms of their defensive line. The offensive line is getting there. The defensive line is building. But that takes, as you know, Georgia, Alabama, they stacked a number of classes, and they have a different philosophy where the defensive line is like first and foremost. And you saw that national championship game. They just kept on bringing in fresh defensive linemen in waves, and they wore out TCU.
Yeah, we were just talking about earlier. Bear Alexander was a true freshman. They already had their studs, and they just roll him out there. And what's he do? He picks up a sack and 2 tackles for loss in that championship game. So yeah, we are not near where Georgia is, and like you said, the Ohio States, the Alabamas. But this is Lincoln Riley in year 2, and so let's perspective. That's what we've been saying on this show is everyone just needs to hit the brakes just a little bit, just relax. Last year's defense. Oh, there was no difference between the first year and this year's defense. It's just like we had over with Helton. You got to relax because last year they were installing the defense. So even the guys who were on the team that had experience playing football that weren't new, right? They're learning a new system. Now those guys, it's already been installed. That defense has been installed. And now they're adding the pieces. And with those pieces, like we talked about last week, these players now had all year to install. They can sit here and be actual coaches on the team during player run practices during the summer here. They're going to know the system. They're going to be talking about it. And it's just all going to add. Now the final piece we're doing is we have our NI collectives. There's that alignment there. Now we're starting to add the pieces that we need on the defensive line. I wanted to, before we go over, talk about the fact that this front seven, Rick, really quick. That's what everyone was cracking on last year. It was pretty bad at times. But we have young guys, Sam Green in that spring game flashed a lot. He looked really good. You just talked about Anthony Lucas we brought over, but you also have, and then Kion Bars. But the addition of these big guys to the other guys, you remember we had Tyrone Taleni and Solomon Bird flashed last year at that rush end position. Jack Sullivan coming over from Purdue. That's a big guy who's a proven player at his position. We, in 1 year, really just got a lot bigger to add the pieces we need in order to, we're hedging at it. I'm tentatively now saying that top 50 that I thought we were going to have, I think it's pretty safe. I want to push and start hoping for with the addition of Bear Alexander. I'm hoping we can get somewhere into the top 40 because if we in the top 40, I really think we can compete with almost anybody in the country.
Yeah, that's true. I totally agree. And let's not forget Jamil Muhammad, the transfer from Georgia State. This guy's going to be outstanding as well. So you can see, Tim, you just rattled off. Look at the depth that we have this year moving forward, the front seven. And so you're going to give, Shane Lee doesn't have to have as many reps as he had last year. Eric Gentry didn't have to have as many, and he ended up getting hurt, unfortunately. But then you bring in, obviously, Attack Curtis. You have the emergence of Rajon Davis, who's going to be a junior, and he started flashing at times last year, and especially during the Cotton Bowl. And then you also have a developmental player in Garrison Madden, who nobody's really heard about unless you're a diehard Trojan that looks at every position group and the depth that they have. But Garrison Madden, let's see what he's going to do. And you also have a Devin Tompkins, the former basketball player out of Stockton, California. He was on a weight nutrition program last year, and he has filled out and developed. Big dude. So exciting to see what's going to happen. I think maybe top 40. Hey, we don't know, but I'll tell you what, Bear Alexander, when you put somebody in a defense such as him, that changes the dynamic. As you mentioned, stuff in the middle, and then you got other guys that know how to get to the quarterback that are fifth-year seniors. It's game on. Everybody eats.
Yeah, it's just going to get better and better. Now, remember, this is just a transfer portal. We also got some great news this week from the class for 2024. We had a peek earlier during the spring game. We are able to take a look at the newcomers, right? Quentin Joyner and Marion Peterson, which just absolutely flashed. You know, Peterson's a little bit of a bigger guy, but this guy truly is the return of thunder to me. That's why I labeled this myself, because once upon a time, those of you guys are a bit younger, but those of you a little bit older, remember, we had thunder and lightning. And lightning was that Reggie Bush, that just electric, flashy, just, you know, hold on to your hat. Anything could happen at any moment. Then we had this guy, Lendale White from Colorado. This guy was deceptively fast, huge, strong, and he was the thunder to Reggie's lightning. And so really quickly, for those of you guys that haven't been able to maybe see Lendale, it's been a while since you've seen him. Lendale White was a big part of all of those big Carroll beatings that we had on, that we unleashed on the rest of the country. Devastating. You could not arm tackle this guy. If you tried to arm tackle him, you're just, look at these guys just dripping off them. You need to square up and hope you're not a defensive back and be able to square up and drive through the tackle. Otherwise, you have zero chance of tackling him. This man used to have some of the fiercest stiff arms that I've ever watched in my entire life. I mean, if I was a corner or a safety or even a smaller linebacker, when this guy was running at me, I was praying that someone else was going to make the tackle, because he could embarrass you and he could shove you straight into the ground.
Lendale White, 6'2", 225, out of Colorado. The guy was a beast. And as many of you know out there, we got a commitment in the 2024 class on Friday, 4-star running back. That's Bryan Jackson. He's out of a little school out in Texas called McKinney High School out of Texas. You may have heard that name before. Somebody go ahead and beat me to it. Put it in the comments. I'll give you a couple seconds as I talk about Bryan Jackson. If you let me know what high school you think he's from, or a former Trojan running back was from. But again, McKinney High School in Texas. Kudos to the staff, to Kyle McDonald. Kyle McDonald's a G. He knows how to recruit running backs. This is actually the third one in the last year because, as you mentioned earlier, Tim, Amarian Peterson, and Quentin Joyner, 2 running backs out of Texas that committed to USC in April of 2022. And now he's got Bryan Jackson from McKinney, Texas. Anybody get that answer of where he's from, or who's also from McKinney, Texas?
Yeah, we just got one right now.
Okay. There you go.
Donald Jones.
Touchdown USC, brother. You know your USC trivia. Rojo. So there's one thing that we're starting to learn about Lincoln Riley and his staff. They love Texas running backs, and so do I, because what we saw on display there, Tim, last week at the spring game, those guys are players. And then you add the likes of a Bryan Jackson as USC transitions into the Big Ten in 2024. This is a Michigan. This is a Big Ten type of back, 6'1", 234. He's a banger, all right? And he's going to be ready to play Big Ten smash mouth football. What's your take on that, Tim?
Yeah, no, last year, I mean, he was playing big boy football in McKinney, and he rushed for 1,600 yards, 1,647 yards on 265 carries. It's averaging 6.2 yards a carry. That, to me, this guy, as someone brought, I was just looking for it. I'll try to give you props for it. Someone brought up Sean Walters as well. This guy kind of reminds me of Sean Walters. If you go all the way back. USC,
that's a name.
Yeah, they love their Alka Cedric Ware, right? Wasn't he also from Texas, I think?
Alka Cedric, yeah.
we love our Texas running backs, and we've always done very well. We've done pretty well in San Diego, but more on that a little bit later. Yeah, I'm ecstatic. This is the guy that really has the size, and if I could find it right here, he has the moves. Here's his huddle tape from high school. If you remember in that video, you saw Lendale breaking a lot of arm tackles. Like, you just cannot arm tackle him. Well, we're getting a running back 6'1", 233. Lendale was tipping close to 240 at one point. But we're getting that similar back where, if you have short yardage, although he wasn't as big, we had oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. Last year, Travis Dye. That guy was a wizard. I mean, he would pick up those short yard first downs. He would just find a way to get that first down. This guy's more your prototypical big dude that's just going to run through and push piles. And so you give him a little bit of a gap in that A gap, but he's going to shove that linebacker. He's going to win that battle more times than not against that linebacker. And the minute here, you're going to see one of those just nasty stiff arms. This guy has it all. This is what we're going to need for our short yardage, but you can also see he has the speed to break away once he gets through there. So I'm really excited what he's going to bring to the offense, an offense that's already disgusting, dripping with talent in the backfield. We're adding another piece next year. There's that stiff arm. I want to wait for it.
There we go.
Okay. So great news as far as roster movement in the program last week, capping off with landing the 6'1", 233-pound linebacker, Bryan Jackson.
Yeah, that's some great momentum. He committed on Friday. You got Bear Alexander committing like 20 minutes before our show. Love you, Bear. Thank you very much. But we get two big guys. We get in size. We're getting more size at USC. We're getting bigger dudes on both sides of the ball and getting better every day. Gotta love it. And this creates momentum along with the NIL collective, as I mentioned, as we move towards the summer visits in May and June. The big visit obviously being the Big Bash weekend, June 17th through the 19th, I believe it is. We'll get more into that on future shows on the class of 2024 and official visits happening in May and June.
And so I would be remiss if I talked about Thunder without talking about Lightning. And so now it's been 4,788 days, Charlie Baker, since this news came that you were going to take away this man's Heisman Trophy. This came back a while ago. Someone posted this to me, and they said, "Thank you, Archer Quick. Is it the Heisman Trust, not the NCAA, that will need to return the trophy?" So the Heisman Trust is hiding behind the NCAA. What they're saying is they vacated his stats, they vacated his numbers. And so therefore that's what the Heisman Trust has been hiding behind. I think it's quite a joke. You're seeing USC starting to push back on it, referring to Reggie Bush's Heisman. So I think honestly, it's just a matter of time. There will be a Saturday coming up not too soon. Someone wants to do the math, but I think it's a home game. What a great way. If we got to 5,000 days and on the 5,000th day, we gave this man the award that nobody questions to this day. And the biggest sticker to me is it's not like USC had anything to do with this money being exchanged between some wannabe agent and his stepfather, 100 miles down the 5 freeway. This has nothing to do with Reggie Bush's play on the field. It has nothing to do with USC. Even the allegations came at the end of his sophomore year that started, even that alleged happened. This had nothing to do with his play on the field. So the fact they took away this trophy, I think eventually is going to be fixed. It better be.
I look forward to the day.
So
as do many Trojans.
That leads us into quotes and notes. A lot to talk about coming out of the spring game. We had a lot of guys shine, a lot of guys pop up, and a lot of comments about also what's next for the Trojans as far as the coaches are concerned.
Yeah, and Lincoln Riley had this press conference, and I thought it was a great question about the development of his coaching staff. He was asked, "What's been the development from your coaching staff from this point at the end of last spring practice to the end of this spring?" And Lincoln said, "A lot. We challenge all of ourselves if we're asking our players to do this, we better be doing the same thing as coaches, all of us. I think we use the example, well, these players now that they're in year 2 and everything's not brand new and they're able to build on that foundation and learn, I'd say the same thing for our staff. It's given us a real opportunity to dive in deep, what we did in the beginning, what we want to do moving forward, the adjustments we want to make, the approach we want to have. The interactions within the staff are smoother. They're more efficient. The relationships now across the board are better. There's a trust and a camaraderie that gets developed by time and experience together. You can't fake that. You can't have that. There's no pill for that. And and I think what Lincoln Riley also talked about earlier is situational mastery. And he's working on that with Caleb Williams. That's to get him to the next level. And that word comes out a lot in all sports. It's about situational awareness, mastery. It's down and distance. It's where are you in the game? You got to be in tune with that. And, although Lincoln Riley won't admit it or hasn't admitted it, he's got to improve his situational mastery when it comes to game planning or in-game adjustments, I should say. And he's going to be working on that. He's got Greg Brown as a defensive analyst, and he's got Kingsbury as an offensive analyst. So he's going to have more time. But you got the continuity with the coaching staff. It's going to contribute to an improvement on the defense. Obviously, the quality of players, the depth. Tim, what's your take on what has impressed you about this coaching staff, and what do you think we're going to see in terms of performance moving into next year?
So in any organization, you do need to have that synergy. And as much as he brought over his staff from Oklahoma, some of them stayed, like the Beanabo, the offensive line coach, right? So you're bringing in Henson, you're bringing in Sean Nua from Michigan. There's new pieces to the puzzle. As we're talking about the players with the install last year, it's also these coaches need to get together and work together and blend. And I do like the fact that you brought up bringing in the analysts because the analysts are also going to help. But we're talking about a lot of winning coming together, right? A lot of experience coming together to blend not only this new culture, but also this coaching staff. And having a year on their belts, anyone's worked together with a new colleague, it takes a little bit of time, right? Rick and we'll still try to work out our chemistry as far as transitions and handoffs within the show. But as you progress, as you move forward, a lot of the things that were hiccups at the beginning, you get to shave those off, the rough edges. And now with the defense, with the players, with the install already done, with the new coaching staff coming together and having 1 year together, this message right here with the camaraderie and the experience that they're having together, you're basically one big culture. And then that comes together. That's how you have teams like Georgia and Alabama. Alabama turns over all the time. They turn over coaches, wherever, but you build this culture. And you choose people that fit into that culture. It would be a player or be a coordinator or coach, and the piece you need to plug in order to make it work. So I'm excited. This shows that Riley, although this will be his 6th year, 7th year coaching, he seems like a very precocious coach, well ahead of his years.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point with Nua, and this is something that if you're not following USC football, you're a fan of other teams, you're not really going to have a ground view level of what's happening, nor the history. You just hear about USC. But under the previous coaching staff, you didn't have the precision coaches that could actually, recruit top end talent, much less get them out of the transfer portal. There wasn't leadership within the university in the coaching, at the head coaching position. A lot of different challenges that USC faced. Many problems caused by USC not getting out of their own way. But what Lincoln Riley has done, it allows this type of weekend, which is a freaking extravaganza. And my God, Tim, was the weather beautiful last night at the USC baseball game? The Trojans beating the Bruins 5-1. And oh, by the way, I took the time. I don't know if you saw that, but Mike Bone was leaving at the end, and I went and I shook his hand and I told him thank you for turning around USC. And he told me to fight on, which was amazing. But my point is, that you can't get a guy like Bear Alexander if you don't have a coach like Sean Nua and Lincoln Riley. All right. Sean Nua, we saw what he did with Aiden Hutchinson 2 years ago at the University of Michigan. You're not going to get a running back like a Bryan Alexander from McKinney, Texas, unless you've got a coach like Kyle McDonald, who's been farming Texas, even before he came to USC when he was at Utah. And you're not going to get a linebacker like Tackett Curtis without a linebacker coach like Odom. So, again, this is about the continuity of staff, and nobody left because they're all rowing in the same direction. They want to compete in the college football playoff and try to win a championship. That's what USC is about. And I know in the last 10 years, you haven't seen that. A lot of younger college football fans, you don't know it. But when USC is right, it's competing for national championships.
And when USC is right, they're right on the lines. And that is literally the piece that we've been missing. We you used to see a lot of big time recruiting classes coming into USC. Oh, wow. Look, Helton has a sixth-ranked recruiting class. Yeah, we had a lot of great safeties, some awesome corners, a couple quarterbacks, some insane NFL receivers, but we didn't have the lines. Riley is doing it. He showed it in this past class. Riley's bringing in the studs on the offensive and defensive line in high school recruiting, and he's filling in the pieces with the new NIL that are coming in right now in order to give us that championship defense and offense that you're going to need to play with the heavy hitters like at Georgia or in Ohio State. If you guys are getting here late, the big news on the show is just a little while ago, Bear Alexander, defensive tackle from the Georgia Bulldogs, has actually transferred to USC to shore up that middle, along with Kion Barrs really revamping and might even be headlining this new front seven with guys like Mason Cobb coming over from Oklahoma State. Go back, you guys, when we finish the show, please go back and watch the first 40 or so minutes that you've missed. Also, really quickly, I don't mean to harp on this, but over 60% of you guys that are tuning into our shows, first off, thank you so much. We're growing every single show. We know that you have lots of options on a beautiful Sunday evening or afternoon to go. We value and thank you all for being here. But if you could, guys, just take one moment down below there to hit that like button and that subscribe, and then notify that when we come up with new videos, you guys can watch whatever we have out for you guys. So speaking of that, thank you so much, Gixter Squid. Gixter Squid is a longtime viewer. He goes back to last year. We first started doing our USC postgame show with Tony Altimore. Gixter, time is money. Love supporting you all. Fight on, Gixter. We appreciate you being here. And Gixter, you watched the game with right, Rick? You watched the championship game in Vegas with Gixter.
That's right.
So thank you guys
all.
Gixter. Yeah, thank you guys all so much for supporting the show. Again, it means so much. If it weren't for you guys, it's just Rick and myself talking to each other, which we probably would do, but it makes a lot more fun with you guys being here. So this is where I'm going to get in trouble, Rick, because as you know, a couple of minutes before the show, I was putting together still some of the video edits and stuff, and the news broke about Bear Alexander, so I had to go back in. I had to change the title and everything of the show. So I'm going to throw this off the top of my head. Why don't you go ahead and start? What we wanted to do is, since the spring is all wrapped up, we just want to go through it really quickly and talk about, as far as the roster, and we know we made some great roster moves, but also some of the guys that were still there. After the spring game, the standouts, who are the best returning players? Who are the best transfer portal players? And then also, who's the most intriguing freshman early enrollee player that were in that game? So, Rick, once you go ahead while I start thinking. I mean, I already know who I'm going to pick. By the way, can we say this for the returning player? Why don't we leave 13, and I mean on offense, why don't we leave 13 out of the equation when we talk about best returning player?
Yeah, let's go ahead and leave Caleb out of there. And for those of you that are joining us tonight live and in the chat, thank you very much. We appreciate your support. And why don't you give us, who do you think, just overall? We're not going to divide it offense, defense. We're just looking at overall. Who would you say is your top returning USC player other than Caleb? Who's your top transfer portal player? And who is your top, like Tim said, freshman early enrollee? Now, obviously, we just read about what happens in practice, but there's not information disclosed. But it's based on the spring game, what you saw, who you saw. And I'll start off. My top returning player that I see happening for next year is I'm going to have to go with God, there's just so many that you can take a look at. But I'm going to have to say Kalen Bullock. Kalen Bullock looks a little bit bigger. I want to. He is a guy who's going to be helping lock down the secondary. He's played 2 years. This is his 3rd year. And if USC's secondary is going to be on point, it's going to be because of Kalen Bullock. He's I believe, an All-American last year. He was disrespected by the Pac-12, wasn't even a preseason honorable mention, and that drove Kalen Bullock. He had 5 picks, 1 behind Clark Phillips III at Utah. But that's who I'm going to go with, Kalen Bullock.
Yeah, well, if I had to pick like an MVP, like most valuable player that I think besides Caleb, I think I would. I'm probably go with Justin Dedich, but we're not doing MVP. We're saying who flashed the most that from we've seen so far in the spring. And I got to tell you, of the returning players, a person that kind of worked his way in to get some playing time late into the season was Jacoby Covington. And Jacoby Covington, if you guys don't know, is a cornerback at USC, and he's a big guy and getting bigger, but he seems, and we didn't get to see a lot of practice, but watching him in the game, a lot of heat was thrown onto the quarterbacks. But Rick, did you see a lot of wide open receivers in that game? I mean, I think as a whole, as a unit, the secondary did a pretty good job. But man, Jacoby Covington, to me, from what I got to see, and again, it's pretty much just the spring game, was the guy that really, of the returning guys, flashed to me the most.
Well, that's interesting you say that, Tim, because Jacoby Covington played in a few games last year, didn't really hit the field towards later in the year. So,
yeah.
But as you can see, this is the perfect example of a player being in the 2nd year. He's out there. He's not having to think about the playbook, the scheme. He's out there just on instinct because he kind of knows it, and the speed's quickening for him. The speed of the game, he's speeding up as the game is slowing down. And so all of a sudden, when when a guy's out there, maybe the windows are, the passing windows are a little bit bigger because he's not anticipating, he's not getting to the spot. And that, like you said, yeah, there wasn't a lot of wide receivers that were wide open, especially with Jacoby Covington, athletic guy. And so, yeah, I can see that. But he's a perfect example of kind of like the growth that you'll see in some of these players because it's the 2nd year in the system.
Yeah, and so a big favorite on the message boards always has been Solomon Tuipulotu. And I'm getting to see lots of solos here.
Yeah,
and that's
good.
A great guess. That's a great answer as well for returning players. I'm glad
Dealer, good call. That's a great call.
Yeah, and Roger Dodger. I think there's another one. I'm sorry if I'm missing you.
Yeah,
so
Roger.
Yeah, you guys, if you don't know Solomon Tuipulotu, the reason why you don't know him, he's been around for a long time. He started out as a linebacker from Mater Dei. He, I believe, had foot injuries, and then I think it was an ACL. He's had a number of injuries, and it's just a great talk about fight on. This guy has fought on through a lot of painful rehabs. He got some playing time and they moved him in slowly to some special teams, and he got some plays. And he got a couple sacks even. And now he's back. And in the spring game, I believe he registered a sack in the spring game. He's looking big. They got him at defensive end, I think is what they're playing. I'm not sure. And he is just causing havoc. So I think that's another great pick there. I'm trying to go through the chat really quick. Saying Dedich. But that's really, I think, all I saw. And then they're talking about freshmen, and you guys are jumping the gun. Okay, so let's talk about the freshmen then. Okay.
Well, let's go to transfer portal. Go to transfer portal. We'll go freshman.
All right.
So transfer portal. I'll go ahead and start that. Well, Tim, why don't you go ahead and start off with transfer portal?
That's not fair. Remember, I'm doing this on the fly.
Okay, then I'll go ahead and start.
Stuff.
Up until 4:30 today, I would have said Anthony Lucas, and not to say that Anthony Lucas, isn't a great player or doesn't have a higher ceiling, but you have to go with Bear Alexander. I'll choose Bear Alexander for the simple reason is that he was on a national championship team. He knows what that looks like, what it's going to take. He played in it. He got tackles for loss, sacks. Both those players, quality, freshmen, which is even better because they both have 2 years. They can play together at SEC teams, come from the SEC. So just the potential that Bear Alexander is going to present kind of like what Sean Cody did for USC back, and he was the first big defensive recruit for Pete Carroll. But that basically signaled, because Sean Cody was a Notre Dame commit back then, and he flipped. Ed Orgeron told Big Mike, his dad, "No, Sean Cody, Big Mike, your son Sean, he's a Trojan. He's going to come to SC." And the UCLA and Notre Dame coaches were at the championship game, and they were laughing at Ed Orgeron. He said, "Oh, you watch. I got my Cajuns on the line, going with red beans and rice, and big old Mike, Sean Cody coming to USC." That's what he said. So, and we know the rest of the history. So you get a key guy like this, and Lincoln Riley's biggest fatal flaw, and we love, we hear it from Norman, Oklahoma. We hear it to Tuscaloosa. We hear it to Athens, Georgia, down to Oxford. Well, he can't play defense. He can't coach defense. Don't know what defense is. Well, hey, I'll tell you what, we're getting a few players, but that's who I'm going with, Bear Alexander. Tim?
Yeah, at first I was popping through, just thinking. I was cheating. I was looking at the roster, and I wanted to say right away, I would say CRW, Christian Roland Wallace, but because he's going to be important, because I just talking about how important that I think that the emergence of Jacoby Covington was, but he's going to be replacing Mekhi Blackman, who was that lockdown guy, and I believe he's been brought in, Christian Roland Wallace, in order to do that. And because last year, you had a lot of bouncing around with Covington and Wright, over there, just kind of working through it. And Damani Jackson's working himself in there. But then I said, wait a minute, hold on. What was our biggest problem last year that we addressed? And I have to go with linebacker, and bringing in Mason Cobb. I think that, we have a lot of shiny new toys, and don't get me wrong, I'm just as excited as everyone about Tackett Curtis. But you guys, Mason Cobb is going to be really important. I know Shane Lee's coming back nice and healthy. Rajon Davis, another returner, coming back. Shine has played really well, starting at the end of the Cotton Bowl and now into spring game. I love his game, but I think that the experience, the playing experience, the one thing that Cobb has over Rajon Davis and Tackett Curtis is all those reps that he has. And so I'm thinking, if we're moving more towards who's like the who you're excited about to who you think we're going to need the most, like as an MVP, I'm thinking we're going to need Mason Cobb to step up, especially early, to solidify a lot of really great pieces we have, in the secondary and on the defensive line. But we all know that middle linebacker position is going to be really, really important. So, and he's my guy. Roger Dodger agrees with me. We got David in there.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Mason Cobb. And all great reasons, Tim. And he's going to be the glue. He's going to be the glue. And we saw him flash, covering a sideline route with Taj Washington, something that we didn't see last year because we didn't have the players. And so he's going to bring a different dynamic, supporting the defensive line, and hopefully limiting those chunk plays that contributed to USC's woeful 6.3 yards per defensive play. Oh my God, I'm having nightmares just thinking about that. Should we move on to freshman enrollees, and who is the one you think stood out?
Yeah, before we do, it's just really quick. So you guys remember, those of you guys are just watching right now, there's 220 of you guys. Thank you all for sharing your Sunday with us. If you've missed any part of the show earlier on, I just want to break down the news. We were able to land at USC the defensive tackle Bear Alexander from the University of Georgia. He's now a Trojan, solidifying this great front seven that we are evolving. There's going to probably quiet a lot of the critics back east about how we can't have a defense. Before we get the horse out in front of the cart, we got to see some games, right? But it's starting to look on paper that we have our guys. We have Kion Bars. We have now a guy like Bear Alexander that's going to fill in like the Said Ellis, the CVT kind of role that's going to solidify the front. And because it all starts at that point of attack, right? It all starts in the trenches. And we're now starting to get legitimate. So freshmen, I know we're going to have two choices here, but which one of the two probably are you to go with?
Well, there's a lot of guys, and I was surprised to see Quentin Joyner flash the way he did. I read about it. I heard about some of the things he was doing during practice. Obviously, there's Zach Branch, and we've seen numerous highlights of him prior to him coming to USC, and then that day at the spring game. Another guy that I was impressed with that day was Elijah Page. the offensive lineman, the tackle from Pinnacle High School. This kid's like, 6'9", like 320. He's already got size. And for him to be out there playing as a freshman, again, it's just a spring game, but he's built to be a tackle. So I was impressed with him. But at the end of the day, it's Tackett Curtis for me. Tackett Curtis, again, position that's gone dormant at USC, that's always been so spectacular, linebacker. And so Tackett Curtis from Louisiana, he brings his lunch pail, his hard hat. You heard Coach Odom talk about, he just stacks good days upon good days. And even his bad days, not really a bad day. This guy's going to bring it. If anything that he needs to work on is, hitting too hard over the middle, because he's playing in the Pac-12, and we don't need to get him ejected from a game. But he's the type of guy that's going to, by the middle of the year, he's going to be playing some serious minutes. So I got to go with Tackett Curtis. How about you, Tim?
This one's really hard for me. I obviously I'm not as smart as the guys over at 247, right, or on 3, but I'm looking at this freshman class that we brought in. I'm trying to figure out, why they're not a top 5 high school class in the country. We saw what the running backs could do, right? I love your pick with Christian Pierce. I mean, that guy had one of the best tackles in the game, and then he was high pointing the ball, those interceptions. I mean, the guy is legit. We haven't even seen Braylon Shelby and David Peavy. This is more of the disgusting additions we have coming in, the wealth that we have coming in on the front 7.
Or Deuce.
Right. Yeah. But if I'm going to go with someone, I'm going to go with, although he had some flashes and moments, it's a guy I picked here for the picture. I'm going to go with Zach Branch, because I think all these freshmen are going to be insane. But of all the guys that make the biggest impact, I think with punt returns, kick returns, I think with his explosiveness, I just can't see anybody able to cover this guy. Like they can't cover him. He's going to be. It's not. You don't win the Heisman Trophy that often as a wide receiver. We just had one recently at Alabama, but in general, you're not going to have. It's usually a quarterback award right now. But if there's somebody who's going to challenge for that, is going to challenge a USC quarterback or the rest of the quarterbacks in the country for that, it's going to be a guy like Zach Branch. He's just a different player. All these guys we're talking about right now, they are amazing in their own rights, but this guy could end up being one of those Trojan greats that we talked about for a long time. And, Roger, you're supposed to pick one. Sam Green did awesome. Exactly. There's a lot of reason to be excited about this freshman class, but we did try to narrow it down and just to try to pick one. You guys, I've been putting it in the chat a couple of times. We would love to have someone join us on the show. I'm going to drop it one more time. We right now have over 250 people. There's got to be a brave soul out there that wants to come in here. If you're a fan of the Trojans, come in and celebrate with us on this great day when we picked up Bear Alexander. I want to hear from you guys. So if you would have a moment, go ahead and click that link. You do not have to show your camera. Matter of fact, it even asks you what name you want to have on there. So you go ahead and you click that link. It's going to ask you what you want your name to be. You can be Joe Schmo, but please keep it, TV appropriate, right, for our audience. And then you get the choice of putting your camera on or off. We just want to hear from you guys. It's a great day to be a Trojan, just like every day. But these pickups, we do want to hear from you. I just dropped the link in there. Click on it and follow the instructions. I said you could be joining us really quickly.
Hey,
Rick,
Tim,
you go ahead.
Tim, earlier you talked about thunder and lightning, and obviously we got Brian Jackson committing. So perfect candidates for lightning obviously would be Zach Branch and Raleek Brown. So there's 2 pieces to watch and see what Lincoln Riley can do to give that thunder and lightning attack that we're so used to seeing. Obviously this year between Quentin Joyner and Amarian Peterson, both physical type of backs, and then Brian Jackson in the years to come. It's going to be exciting to watch what type of dynamic offense, the different angles and wrinkles that we're going to get to see with different types of players. So exciting times.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see. We let's say we had let's say you have Singer out there, I don't know, and then you have Brendan Rice, and then you have Zach Branch split out, and then all of a sudden you have Brown, we motion him out into the slot. I want to see that secondary try to cover those guys. It's going to be, you're going to have guys running wide open on that field. I can't wait to see the explosive that having both those guys on the field at the same time, and then having a linebacker try to cover Raleek Brown. It's going to be great to see. So unless you guys have any questions for us, which you could go ahead and drop in there or call in. It looks like we're beginning to wrap up our show with a beautiful 234 people out there. Thank you guys all so much for being here. I don't know how to thank you enough to share your time on a Sunday with us. Please do take a second to like and subscribe if you would like to see more and more of our content.
Oh, actually, Tim, I do have one last question for you and for our viewers out there in the chat, and if anybody would like to call in. But there was a new rule, some rule changes in the NCAA that happened at the end of the week. Perhaps I think it was Friday. And there were 3 rule changes that were passed. The first one is there will be there's going to be a running clock in college football, with the exception, before the clock would stop on first downs, when the umps, the referees would set the chains, and then they would start the clock again. There's going to be a running clock now after first downs, with the exception of the last 2 minutes in the first half and second half. There's also a rule that says no consecutive timeouts by one particular team. And then there was a third rule. It was kind of secondary. I think, what it said was if there's a penalty when the time runs out in a period or half, they would usually play one on-time down. They're just going to move that to the next quarter or half. So those are the 3 rules. The major rule, though, is the running clock. What that's going to do is it's going to limit the number of plays. They estimate it's going to be 7 to 8 plays, I believe, a game. But what are your thoughts on that rule, Tim, and how it might change what we see in games moving forward?
Well, yes, it's going to, a couple of things. One, it's going to make the comeback from the other team a lot more difficult, because if you remember, if you have a team that's up, let's say 21 points at the beginning of the fourth quarter, or even like halfway through the third quarter, they're going to start running the ball. They're going to try to start, using up clock, because they want to keep the clock running. So they're not going to run out of bounds. They already got rid of that rule outside of 2 minutes. They're running out of bounds. So they're playing in the middle of the field. And now when the ball's thrown, right, on an incomplete pass, is that correct? That the clock's still going to run? Is that as well?
No. What it is on first down. Yeah, first downs.
Okay. So then on first downs and stoppage, I don't think it's going to be that. That would be minimal as far as affecting the game. I can't say it's strategic, but this is just to shorten the game. It's so that one game doesn't bleed into the next game, and then whoever's covering that game loses out on commercial time, right? They're paying for that game, so they probably want the right to run commercials. That's something that Mark Rogers was talking about. He worked at ESPN. And so if you have a game that runs over, then you're missing out on commercial opportunities for that section of the game that you're overlapping with the other broadcast. So that's a big part. And remember, you guys, so they talk about they're trying to shorten the game to protect the players. But then how come we're going to a 12-man playoff, a 12-team playoff, and a 16-team playoff, adding more games to football? Now, I'm a proponent for more football, and I'm also a proponent for taking care of and watching out that these student athletes aren't abused and they don't get hurt and they go on to their careers. But it seems like the motivation to do this isn't really coming from they're literally looking out for the player. It just seems like they're trying with these these billion-dollar contracts with Fox and ESPN. They're just trying to make the television executives happier, so that they're not going to bleed over into games, and then also shorten the length of the game. Because here's what happens. Remember, when they do when they shorten these games is the game still lasts as long. It's just those incredibly long TV timeouts when you're in a stadium and you got the guy out there with the little red vest. He's sitting out there for like 3 minutes because they're playing a commercial. All it means is they're going to play more commercials. So in the end, I don't like it. It's going to make it harder and harder for these guys to break, the rules, the records that are out there by shortening games, shortening the amount of attempts they get plays in a game, along with, so you have 2. You have the one where it's the no out of bounds, so the running clock on the out of bounds, and now you have the no first down. It's becoming more and more. Also, one thing that worries me, it sounds a lot more like the NFL. We're just moving more and closer towards that NFL model. And the reason why we love this sport, those of you guys are college football fans first, Is it this regionality? Well, Fox and ESPN are ruining that already by the realignment thing. And now we're trying to make the games even seem faster and more like the NFL model.
Well, they say, roughly on the average, the last year was like 178 to 179 plays a game. The NFL's at 157. So this might get down the average number down to the 170 range. So yeah, it is moving more towards the NFL. But I think this rule is going to actually help those teams, going to benefit those teams that have a diversified offense that can possess the ball depending upon their opponent, passing as well as running the ball. Because we all saw, we've seen USC with its great offensive lines and the great running backs from years past, like Marcus Allen and Charles White. They would bleed out the clock. Just keep on running student body right. And so if you can do that, you're going to keep that clock running. And I think USC has a diversified offense, and we'll have to see how much it benefits teams like USC and these other great offenses like a Tennessee, a Georgia, Ohio State. Michigan's got a great running game, so we'll see how that benefits these teams.
Well, I think the running game with the addition of those two freshmen, picking up Marshawn Lloyd from South Carolina, and now with our big Bryan Jackson, I think that we're going to have a pretty powerful running game as well. Listen, so I have one brave soul. Thank you so much. We actually had somebody who wanted to join us. Let me move myself down. Okay, and so joining us, we have Marcellus. Marcellus, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good, guys. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great.
Thank you.
Yes. I just have a simple question. And so with the addition of Big Bear Alexander, where do you think our defense can be at, even with Alex Grinch? Where do you think our defense can realistically run? Like, do you think they're going to run a 4-3, a 5-2 possibly? Or like, what are the expectations for our defense now?
I think they saved that 3-3-5 that they've been running, correct? Isn't that Alex Grinch's defense?
Grinch's defense is a 3-3-5, and until we hear something else, I'd have to go with that. But you bring up a great question, and was it Marcellus?
Yes.
Yes, you bring up a great question because look at the number and the quality of defensive players that we got in the transfer portal. Does that factor into perhaps changing the scheme? I don't know. I would tend to doubt that because you then everybody else has to learn a new scheme. And if you believe what you hear about perhaps Alex Grinch being on the hot seat, why would you want to change the scheme? You pretty much probably want to stay with the same scheme and look and go with the number and quality of defensive players that you just added to your roster. That's what I think.
Okay.
Yeah. And I to defend the scheme, you saw John Jackson. He was at the spring game and he did JJ was talking about, in order to miss all those tackles, you have to be in the right position. And we don't know. There's a lot been said about Alex Grinch, his scheme, etc. But I think this is going to be put up or shut up here. When I could fully see the reason why there was so much difficulty last year not having your pieces in. But man, they've done a great job getting the pieces in place this year. I think that there will be that Grinch and his schemes are going to be definitely under a microscope this year, given the fact that we have all these high level talent transfers coming in to fill in positions that were deficient last year.
Marcellus, I got a question for you.
Yes.
What's your opinion? What's your feeling on the signing of Bear Alexander?
Personally, I love it. We're getting a guy, that has championship experience, being at Georgia, and for him to come into that locker room now with that experience, I think that he can help the other guys around him. I feel like his presence would be more of an addition to what we are kind of missing at SC right now, especially on like the defensive side, to have that guy coming there with that championship experience, I think that's going to help us out a whole lot.
Could you have imagined 6 weeks ago if I say, hey, Marcellus, or actually 3 months ago, look, we're going to have Anthony Lucas, Bear Alexander, Jack Sullivan, and we'll get this guy Kion Bars from Arizona, and this kid Jamel Muhammad's going to come. And also we're going to get a linebacker, Mason Cobb, from Oklahoma State. Could you imagine that happening?
Oof. If you would have told me that 6 weeks ago, I probably would have laughed. I probably would not believed it.
Yeah. So, USC is in a good spot, completely changing the defense in a matter of a few short months.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone laughed last year when Lincoln Riley a little over a year ago, when Lincoln Riley showed up for his presser and said that he was going to make Southern California the mecca of college football. And you realize that either people are whistling past the graveyard on that statement, because everyone does know, the older you are, the more sure you are of this, that if you have the right coach, if you have the right alignment at the university where USC is a priority, USC can play with anybody. And whereas we do have our lows, and we have had our low points, I'm not going to go back into that. When USC is right, under a McKay, under a Robinson, under a Carroll, and hopefully under a Lincoln Riley, there are few teams that can out scheme us and out recruit us. And I think that's showing up we're not just picking up guys from, let's say, Arizona anymore. We are going to Georgia and grabbing guys from Georgia. We are grabbing guys from the bigger schools. And that's started, Texas A&M. We're going into the SEC and we're pulling, and not only guys that are cast off, we're pulling guys that were 5 stars or 4 stars and starting in their relative positions.
Right.
So, awesome. Thank you so much for calling in. We hope that next week you do the same. You call in with us.
You guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, man. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, there we go. We have one brave soul that called in. I dropped the link in again. For those of you guys who want to give it a shot, don't worry. We're not going to bite. We do appreciate all of you guys showing up again. If you missed out earlier, please go back and watch the beginning of the show. We go into great detail about some of the great pickups we had with Bryan Jackson as committed to USC in 2024. We also talked about the huge news that Bear Alexander, the defensive tackle from Georgia, is joining USC and going to add to this great, incredible revitalization of the front seven. Please take a moment to subscribe as well, and go back and watch that. And, leave us in the comments. Let us know who you think are the MVPs are so far of the season in the comment section. All these things do a great job of growing the show. You guys have been amazing, and we have been growing. We have another brave soul entering into the studio. We have I can't read that. I got something in the way. Is it Geraldo?
Yes, it is.
Gerardo. Sorry, Gerardo.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing? Let me move you up here. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
Doing great. Listen, it's always a great day to be a Trojan, but when you're picking up 4-star starter, well, not stars, but 4-star defensive tackles from Georgia, it's a great day.
Absolutely. I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, and I'm going to ask Matt the same thing on the nighttime show tomorrow. Of all the USC, we talk a lot about all the players, but of all the USC assistant coaches, which do you think are truly amazing, and which one could use a little development or a little growth, for lack of a better word? Can you talk a little bit about the assistant coaches? And my second question to piggy onto that is Pete Carroll, because I've been around for a long time. I saw his, and even going back to Ricky Bell. He used to say that the the practices were much tougher than the games. So when do you think we can get to that level? We're talking a year, 3 years? Just some thoughts.
Yeah, no, first off, the first one is a great question. I'm who to me has done, it's so hard, because am I going to go with the defensive line coach, Nua, because of the players that are coming in? to play. That's, or talk about Manning with some of these rush ends that he's brought in. You could start there. You might want to talk about Henson. Talk about the offensive line. I've really been happy with the offensive line that we've had. And you just earlier on, you had Rick talking a beautiful soliloquy about the fact of what is being done in the running back room under Kyle McDonald. I mean, it's so that's like such a loaded question because it's hard for me to choose. And then we had all the people over there in Norman crying about, oh, you wait, you watch. Benny Wiley, that guy's going to make your team soft as melted butter. Yet everything I've seen so far shows the complete opposite. These guys, I mean, the line that I heard from a parent of one of the players was he went in there and says, you guys look like a bunch of magazine models. I'm going to make you guys look like football players. And I'll tell you what, at the spring game, when I was alongside some of these guys, some guys I remember from last year, they're absolutely 100% bigger. Do you want me to narrow it down to one? Gosh,
just a few.
That is really hard for me to do. And we're leaving out guys like Dante Williams. I mean, I don't know really how to answer your question other than I am truly grateful for this coaching staff they have. I'm probably not naming guys that I should be naming. We really have an amazing staff. And as I said in the beginning, you fix the lines, you fix USC, right? And my dad was talking the other day about, your first recruits are as a head coach when you come into somewhere is you recruit your staff. And man, I'm from what we're seeing in year 2 right now under Lincoln Riley, this staff he recruited is truly amazing. Rick, do you have anything to add?
So, Gerardo, thank you for your question. So you want to know my opinion on the assistant coach I'm most impressed with, and maybe one that needs a little bit more development?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to have to say I'm impressed. They're all great coaches, and you heard me talk about Kyle McDonald, but I'd have to say Sean Nua. And here's why. He did coach Aiden Hutchinson. He's an outstanding defensive line coach. And I look at, the talent that we've acquired this offseason through the transfer portal. I have to believe that Sean Nua was part of that. And that's the most important, I think, missing piece to getting USC back competing for championships. And I like his personality. And I have to say that I'm gonna go with Sean Nua. I would say, and this is not a cop out, but the coach I think that needs more development is it's not really fair to him because I don't think he has the players.
Sure.
But Zach Hansen, tight end coach, and we'll get to see that. He just hasn't really had the players or our infamous special teams coach, whoever that is, because it's by committee. So I would say those two areas need development. I'm going to go with that. And your second question about Pete Carroll and about those teams and the practices, great observation. And when do I think that can happen with this team? Well, I think you're starting to see it this spring practice, and all of that had to happen, was happening, in year 2 and beyond. They started in year 1, but you have to have the players and the talent. And Pete Carroll was able to stack recruiting classes, top recruiting classes. And now you're seeing what Lincoln Riley's doing through the transfer portal. You got a top 10 high school recruiting class this year. But as you start getting the better players, that's when you're going to see competition for the ones, competition for the twos, adding that depth. So it's going to happen it's happening this spring. It's going to happen this summer, and it's going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
Tim,
and he will get 2 new toys to play at the tight end position very soon.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
And
he hasn't had the players.
And Gerardo, I hope that we have, rest in peace, Ricky Bell. I hope that this young Bryan Jackson can be like maybe just another Lendale / Ricky Bell type of banger that can take the ball 30 times. Back in the day they did that back then. I don't think they would ever do that again. But just be able to just take over a game and salt it away. So
the ball doesn't weigh very much. That's it.
Yeah, that was the famous line, right? That's one of those John McKay quips, right?
Correct.
It's not. They asked, I think it was Charlie White. Coach Charlie White. He said the balls that weigh that much like that. Yeah, I'm probably butchering the quote, but yeah, I love that quote as well. Gerard, I hope you make sure you call and join us and call in next week. Thank you so much. Absolutely great questions. Thank you.
Yes, fight on. Great job.
Fight on. All right. So next up, we have a very special guest. We have our partner in crime,
No way.
Tony Altimore.
Oh,
Tony,
Tony's here.
how you doing?
Hey, good. Hey, sorry, we've been in the middle of some stuff, but I wanted a quick call in. What an exciting time. We got some guys who know how to tackle.
Imagine that.
Let's hope so.
We're going to tackle some people. I like it.
Tony, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Been a bit of a crazy weekend here, but when I saw the Bear Alexander news, I was just over the moon. I was actually gonna call it and show you guys some stuff that we just put together. Some really interesting stuff on fundraising and what it shows about USC and the Big Ten. I think is really interesting.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
we gotta give you away. We gotta give you a whole segment.
Yeah, we'll do a whole segment, but not now because today's the Bear Alexander Day. Today,
Yeah,
this is all about. We don't have to talk about fundraising. We have to talk about tackles and defense.
Yeah.
Now you guys. So you guys know I don't track the spring roster as well as I should, but I think our entire front seven are transfers, aren't they?
Well, let's see.
Pretty close.
You're gonna have Bear Alexander or Cayenne Bars. They're both transfers. I'm projecting. I don't know. They don't have a depth chart.
Yeah.
But I'm going with it that Sullivan or Solo. So if Solo's defensive end, I don't know what they're picking
Or give or take. Let's call it like with one or two.
Yeah, let's say a lot of them. I think most of them. I think,
and of course you have different defensive packages, so people switch in. I don't want. It's not.
Yeah, it's Gentry could be in there, and when he gets back and healthy,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think we're gonna see a lot of different fronts. You know, a lot of the good news is like I think Rick, you said this a little bit earlier. We had some good players last year, but they all got banged up because they all had to play lots of reps because they didn't have anybody behind them. Rick said the drop off between the starters and the second string was
huge.
so vast. Yeah. So you had guys playing way too many reps. And so you guys who haven't played football before, later in the season, your body's already banged up. But all those reps, every single rep adds up. And so you get into late October and November, that's when we start seeing our injuries. Well,
you gotta have that depth.
Yeah.
So
we have 9 games after the bye week. And in the last 6 before a Pac-12 championship or a college football playoff.
It's probably gonna be a little rough, but I mean, if you think about and also, I mean, one of the things I think people do not appreciate is just how bad that team was that lost to Cal Berkeley and Brigham Young. Right? Like as much as we complain about, oh my God, we didn't tackle anybody in the Cotton Bowl, and that, I mean, it's true, but like we're talking about they rebuilt a team who lost to Brigham Young and Cal.
Yeah.
So like the turnaround just continues to be phenomenal, and I think that it's really, really exciting. And what a good day to be a Trojan.
Oh, great weekend to be a Trojan. Tim and I got to go to the baseball game last night.
Oh, did you? Oh, nice.
So we were hanging out with JJ. They were commemorating the 1998 USC National Championship team, the 25-year anniversary. Yeah. And one of my good friends, Jamie Davenport, played baseball at SC. So we're hanging out with those two guys and Tim's dad and my daughter. And it's a great night to be a Trojan. The weather was beautiful. And I actually met Mike Bone last night.
Oh.
And they were playing his theme song. I said to Tim, I go, look, listen to this song. They were playing George Thorogood, Between Innings, Bad to the Bone. That's Mike Bone, baby. Mike Bone's Bad to the Bone. I shook his hand and I told him, hey, thank you for turning around USC. And he told me to fight on. So
exactly.
I couldn't pass up that moment. I was like, hey, man, I'm going to go say hi.
Exactly. Well, you have to. That's awesome. Well,
you talked to Mike Bone. I talked to Pete Carroll after the game, and I asked him. I said, Pete, I think we're gonna get Bear Alexander. I'm not sure, but I think we're gonna get Bear Alexander next tomorrow. And he said, I think we just won the national championship. So I got a little clip from him. I could go. We could probably do the interview a little bit later, but that's really what we have going on. There's a lot of excitement, and if you guys, you have to get out to Dato. You guys, I don't know what the crowd yesterday was great, but in general, it's kind of lacking. And if you can go and have 2 ex-Trojan players join you to give you some serious, incredible insight, then I highly suggest you guys do that as well.
That's amazing. What a time. I had a this is really funny. I had a pledge brother who was on the baseball team, I think, that year. But he rode the bench and then transferred to Navy.
Wow.
Believe
That's
it
a
or
story.
not.
That's
Yeah,
a story.
yeah, ended up a Rhodes Scholar too.
Oh,
Who I think USC needs to claim him. But anyway, the great guy. But the what a phenomenal. Anyway, sorry to bore you guys, but what a phenomenal weekend! So exciting for Bear Alexander, and I am stoked that our defense is looking good.
It is. And
Looking
just so you
good.
guys, if you guys don't know Tony, what are you thinking? You weren't there watching our post game shows. So Tony is our third, I guess our third amigo on the post game show that we do after every Trojan game. We'll be doing that again this year. Tony, thank you for coming on. I'm going to hold you to that about those numbers in the
Do
Big
it.
Ten.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do it another time and fight on, boys.
right on,
Right,
Tony.
Tony.
Great,
All right.
Talk
great
to you
having
soon.
you.
All right,
Thank you.
bye.
We just lost Angel. We had another caller. We also have another VIP coming in. We have Joey. Angel, you dropped. If you could join us, come on back. We'll get you in here. Joey Foster, the man, the myth, huge Mountaineer fan for West Virginia Mountaineers. How you doing tonight?
Hey man, what's going on, guys?
Hey, Joey,
you
good
know,
evening.
good evening there, Rick. I wanted to come in because I wanted to give you my top 4 teams in the country at the end of the year. Okay, my teams to make the playoffs this year, and number 1, Alabama. Number 2, Penn State.
Ooh.
Number three, Texas. Number 4, after the additions and stuff on defense, I've got to go USC, guys. Listen,
Wow.
you know I've been ragging your guys' defense for the past year. I
Yes, you
told you, and actually before last year, right? I
Yeah.
told you Alex Grinch is terrible. Lincoln Riley does not recruit defensive players. He's proven me wrong this year. He's getting some defensive players in there, and guys, I tell you what, if you've got the defense now to stop the Utahs and the Oregons and the Washingtons and things like that. So I believe USC, without a doubt, will be in the playoffs in the year because your offense is not going to be a question whatsoever. Not in my mind, anyway.
Yep.
So your defense is the one thing in question to me, and it's looking good. Great. It's looking great right now. So
Yeah,
congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
you're drinking that Drew Aller Kool-Aid, huh? And
Well, you know,
who's gonna be the quarterback down there in Austin to get them in the top 4?
I don't. Let me say, I don't like Alex Grinch. Right? I don't. I thought he was
You
horrible
made
at
that very clear,
Oklahoma.
Joey.
Right. I thought he was horrible at Oklahoma, and I told you last year, you're going to be great on offense, but you're going to lose some games because of your defense, and you did. But this year, you picked up some defensive players. Now, I think Alex Grinch is a good defensive coordinator. The problem is that I didn't think Lincoln Riley would allow him to recruit the defensive players and actually hand out all those scholarships on defense. You guys have picked up 12 blue chip players on defense this year. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to disparage anything that happened because Utah and what Whittingham has over there is great. But we saw what USC could do when a team's healthy in Salt Lake City. It was a close game. We lost by 1 point. And then in the Cotton Bowl, we saw the disaster of the Cotton Bowl that was caused by just a really fluke play. But that's why you play all 60 minutes, right?
Right.
And then I'm not going to take away the win, but I'm discount the spread in that game. I think that if we had a healthy Caleb Williams, even the most ardent Ute is going to say, yeah, that would have been a really close game. So all we got to do is improve this defense. Probably, what would you guys say? 4 to 7 points. And you're probably looking at an undefeated team last year if Caleb stays healthy. And I think the additions, like you just said, will be enough for those 4 to 7 points. You guys agree?
Well, I do too. I agree with you 100%. What was your ranking last year? You were 101. Am I right? 101.
Well, if you look at defensive yards per play, and that's what, instead of looking at yards per game given up, yards per play, USC was ranked 119, giving up 6.3 yards per play. If we can get that number down by a yard in the 5.2 to 5.1 range, that's going to put us in the top 40 in defense. So that's the metric I'm really looking at.
I don't think there's going to be any question that you guys can do that. And if you don't do it this year, then I think it's time to look elsewhere for DC. Don't you agree?
Yeah,
It's
and
probably time to look elsewhere.
I think, well, that's premature. I mean, again, like I've been telling you for a long time, let's see how this works out. And for you guys that aren't math majors out there, 119 out of 133 is pretty bad. And,
Yeah,
but
it's
I
pretty
will
bad.
add that is even as bad as USC did statistically last year, there were portions of the season last year, and I'm gonna get a lot of heat for this, but there were portions of the season last year where USC did look very good to great on defense. I know a lot of people like to point at and say, well, turnovers are a fluke thing. They're a 50-50 ball, the ball bounces this way or that way. I heard some guy talking about, yes, that is true. If most of them are fumbles, but the majority of USC's turnovers were interceptions. And of the interceptions, they were guys breaking on ball, and every time I heard them talk about, they talked about that's the film study, and Grinch told them to look for this. Matter of fact, on the game-winning interception that Corey Foreman had against UCLA, they had watched that play in film, and he knew exactly what to do. So for everyone out there that wants to say, since Grinch, get rid of him, tar and feather, blah, blah, let's give them one season. Because what I will tell you is what I saw last year, as bad as they were statistically, it was night and day better than the previous year. And that's what they were pretty much working with.
So yeah, I'm one more time, my top four, and I didn't have USC in there until really a couple of days ago, and that's Alabama, and believe it or not, Penn State, because I think Penn State's a sleeping giant in the Big Ten right now, Texas, and USC. I think it's time. I think the times are changing. I don't believe ACC is going to get anybody in this year. I think Florida State and Clemson are just going to both get. They're going to be good, but they're both going to lose a couple of games through the year. And ACC is not going to get anybody in. USC has all the pieces in place to go undefeated, in my opinion, and should go undefeated. So that's why I've got them in there.
Well, I think that might be a little bit aggressive, but I appreciate the undefeated expectation prediction. You mentioned earlier, Joey, 12 defensive players that USC picked up. They actually, if you look at the transfer portal, out of the 12 that we currently have, 7 are defensive players, but there are some outstanding freshman early enrollees that maybe add up to that 12 when you look at, Tackett Curtis, Christian Pierce, a few of the other guys, Sam Green, that are in the program right now. So it just seems like, yes, we have.
Y'all got that Simmons kid too, right? Out of Texas. That what's his name? Colin Simmons.
No, that name doesn't ring a bell.
I was thinking you guys picked up him too.
No, we have a guy named Braylon Shelby from Texas, who's he'll be coming in the summer, who was a 2023 recruit. Okay. And we have another guy by the name of David Peavy out of San Diego Lincoln High School that's also going to be coming in the summer.
Well, listen, guys, great luck on the season. Wish you a lot of luck. You guys know I don't never crash one of your shows and things, but I wanted to come in and just say that USC looks like a pretty good team this year. So congratulations on that. I'm rooting for you guys. Mainly because I don't have to play you. West Virginia don't play you guys. I could care less if you guys do good, right?
Right.
You guys tear it up, and I will say this: if you and Texas do end up in the Final Four like I predict, just beat the shit out of Texas for me. That's all I ask. Okay, just beat the shit out of them.
Good luck to you and the Fighting Graham Heralds next year. Don't say that. Try to warn you, Joey. That's all I'm gonna tell you.
Great singer there too.
Love you guys. Hey, if you're in the chat, be sure and hit the thumbs up on this thing, man. I've seen had 200 and some people in here, and the thumbs up were kind of weak. Come on, hit the thumbs up for these guys. Hey, you guys are doing great. Y'all have a great night.
Thank you, Joey. Appreciate you.
Yeah, another great show. Again, this show is nothing without you guys. Thank you for all the wonderful comments. Thank you for joining us on a Sunday. I just put out the last call for the chat. If you want to join us, I dropped the link. Please feel free to come in if you'd like. Angel, if you're out there, I'm sorry we didn't get to you fast enough. You were out there. You dropped a couple of times. If you don't want to call in now, please make sure you call in next week. So on a great day, just to recap, you guys, if you're just joining us late, make sure you go back to the beginning. We did a great conversation about the pickup we had in the transfer portal. We picked up Bear Alexander, defensive tackle from Georgia. We went in depth about that, about the recruiting and the transfer portal philosophy of Alex Grinch. We also talked about the great Thunder, the return to Thunder, our Lendale White 2. Another earlier, Gerardo was talking about, if you're a little bit older on that, talking about the Ricky Bell. We have our new, like, hopefully, like another banger like Ricky Bell. We talked about Bryan Jackson and many other things about recruiting. Thank you all so much for joining us. Rick, did you have any final thoughts before we go?
Well, the state flag, California, it's got a bear on it, the California Republic. So welcome, Bear Alexander, to California. And glad that you chose USC, and let's fight on. And thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next week.
Yeah, usually bear hunting season is somewhere towards the end of November when we're kicking the baby bears around. But we got a little bit of bear season earlier this year. Thanks again, you guys. You guys are great. Appreciate you joining us. Make sure on your way out, if you could hit that like and subscribe button. And we'll see everybody next week.